Guys, I'm back. We're going to discuss the big cleanup today and complete your ELA activities for April 30th. So hopefully you've already read this story. It starts on page 318, and then you'll be ready to complete the questions and the activities that follow. Okay, let's get started. The big cleanup. Boys and girls, who remembers, I hope everybody does, what we call a play? There's another name for a play, a little bit of a fancier name that we use in third grade. Yep, that's right, drama. Okay, so this is another type of genre or type of story. A play or a drama is written a little bit differently than a regular story is. It still has a plot. It still has characters, a beginning, middle, and end, problem and solution. Problem, of course, is the conflict, and the solution is how the problem is solved, but it's just told in a different way. So over here we have the cast of characters, Scott, Talia, and Renzen. And then when the play starts, Scott starts talking. What he actually says is called the dialogue. So when you're asked a question about the dialogue in a play, that basically is just what the characters are actually saying to each other. Now notice, it's written a little bit differently than it is in a story. What Scott says is not in quotation marks. But if this were actually written in a story format, what Scott says would be in quotation marks. So dialogue in a story has quotation marks. Dialogue in a play or drama does not have quotation marks. The characters, whatever they say, the author just writes it out beside their name, beside their speaking part, without quotation marks. Okay. Let's see, text focus here, stage directions. This is something that we've discussed before with drama, and we were actually about to start that, boys and girls, before school let out. We were going into drama and plays, and we were going to focus on these parts again. But the stage directions in plays are just a little bit more information that the author gives us about the characters and the setting, kind of tells us what's happening and what's going on. Okay. So in this play, Scott is the leader of his team. He is leading a team to go up Mount Everest, but not just to enjoy the journey. They're actually going to help clean up the mountain. Timba mentions, or in the story before this one, climbing Mount Everest, we learn that Timba is concerned about Mount Everest. And one of the reasons he's concerned about it is because of all the trash that people have left along the mountain. All the different travelers, the different people that have tried to climb the mountain, as they traveled, they would leave some of their supplies behind, like old batteries, empty oxygen tanks, things like that. A lot of times that stuff is very heavy to carry. And so I'm sure as they're going up the mountain, they feel like it's just easier to leave it behind, but that's not really the best choice because that's left the mountain with a lot of trash and pollution because of that. So this team is going up the mountain to actually help collect trash and clean it up. Let's see here. I am going to read this. Scott says, many people love to climb Mount Everest, but they leave behind trash. We're a new kind of climbing team. We're going up Mount Everest to help clean it up. Does everyone have his or her equipment? We can tell that Scott is the leader because he's telling everybody what their job is going to be, and he's making sure that everyone has their equipment. Talia holds up her trash bags. These are some of the stage directions here. Also, if you were Talia acting this out on a stage, you would know what to do. So that's why they call them stage directions. It also helps the characters to know what they're supposed to be doing. We do. These bags are for carrying down trash. Renzen says, we have oxygen in tanks. That's because air contains less oxygen as the altitude increases. meaning as they go higher up, there's less and less oxygen. It will be harder to breathe as we climb higher. They arrive at a campsite on the mountain. More stage directions here and also information about the setting so you know where they are. Scott is looking around and frowning. Many climbers stopped here to rest as they approached the peak. They left old bottles, used batteries, and empty oxygen tanks. Renzen, Mount Everest should be one of the cleanest places on Earth. Talia, let's pick up the trash. Then the slopes will be cleaner. Of course, we have some illustrations here to help us. You can really see they're having to work hard to pick up all this trash. Okay. Talia says, we must be careful of avalanches up here. Renzen, that's right. An avalanche would bring our work to a halt. Scott, waving them onward. So he's like, come on, guys. Let's go. This is the last section to climb. When we succeed, we will have climbed the tallest mountain on Earth. Talia says, we'll have collected lots of trash. And then Scott says, other people are helping to clean Mount Everest too. These days, climbers must bring drinks in cans. Then they flatten the empty cans and carry them away in their backpacks. If we all do our part, Mount Everest can stay clean for a long time. Of course, you can see the boys smiling here, and Talia, they're happy that they've made it up the mountain and they're helping to clean up Mount Everest and make it a cleaner place for the animals or for the people. Okay. Let's go back to your packet. All right, so number 1, compare and contrast the big cleanup and mountain surviving on Mount Everest. And boys and girls, I don't know why I keep saying climbing on Mount Everest. Just forgive me. You know, Miss Clyde sometimes just says the wrong thing. I'm getting old. Just bear with me. Okay. So we've got our Venn diagram here set up. It doesn't matter which title you put first. You could put surviving on Mount Everest here and the big cleanup on this side. I put the big cleanup here and surviving on Mount Everest here. So that part doesn't matter. Remember, a Venn diagram shows how things are alike in the middle and how they're different on the outside part. So characteristics or things that only relate to the big cleanup are on this side. What relates only to surviving on Mount Everest is on the right side, and what they have alike is in the middle. So how the stories are similar, things that they have in common or the same are in the middle. Okay, these are just a few that I came up with. You may think of something else, or you may choose to put something else, but you are certainly welcome to use some of mine. Okay, so obviously the big cleanup is fiction. It's not true. Is it realistic fiction? Somewhat, yes. Of course, there would have to be, though, adults with these kids. In real life, kids would not be climbing up the mountain on their own. But it is possible that a cleanup crew could go up the mountain if they're prepared enough. The kids climb Mount Everest to clean up the trash. That was their purpose in climbing. And there's really no information, though, about the mountains or Mount Everest. There's not a lot of facts teaching us about the mountain. Whereas surviving on Mount Everest, it's nonfiction, meaning it really happened and it's full of facts. Timba wanted to reach, I just realized I made a mistake there. Should just be reach without the T. Timba wanted to reach, oh no, I see what I did, boys and girls. I didn't put the right spacing in there. See if I can quickly fix that. Timba wanted to reach the summit of Mount Everest because it was his dream. So that was Timba's purpose for climbing the mountain, not to clean the mountain. And then we also learned many facts about Mount Everest, such as the height of the mountain, how tall it is, the weather, what mountains are, lots of other information about the types of equipment that they need. So there's a lot of facts in surviving on Mount Everest, whereas the big cleanup is more of just a story with a beginning, middle, and end and characters. Okay, number 2, pick the correct summary of the big cleanup. Boys and girls, remember a summary tells about the most important parts of the story. Sometimes a summary is one sentence, sometimes it's a couple of sentences. So here we just have one sentence summary. So we've got to include the summary, or think about the summary that best tells about what happens in the story. Obviously, A would be wrong because it says there's 4 friends that climb Mount Everest, helping each other to reach the summit or the top, which is true, but it doesn't really tell us why they're climbing the mountain. Okay. C says 3 friends climb Mount Everest and complain about the trash they see along the way. They do complain a little bit about it. They don't really like it, but they're more focused on cleaning it up, not just complaining about it. D says that 3 friends explain the equipment needed to climb Mount Everest. It is true that Renzen explains the purpose of the oxygen tanks, but that's not what the whole story or the whole drama is about. That's more like just one detail. So the best answer would be B. 3 friends climb Mount Everest, but notice trash and clean it up on their way to the summit or to the top of the mountain. Okay. Use the 5-finger retail and fill in each story element of the big cleanup. This is just a graphic organizer, boys and girls, like the ones that we use in class, just to help summarize and retell the story. Of course, the title is the big cleanup. You know that the setting is takes place on Mount Everest. I didn't fill that in. I'll let you fill in the characters. I did fill in the problem. The main problem is that over the years, people have climbed Mount Everest. People that climb Mount Everest have left behind their trash or left their trash behind. So, of course, that's the main problem. And I did get you started over here with the events. Excuse me. In the very beginning, Scott is making sure that everyone has their supplies or equipment ready for the trip to clean up the mountain. In the middle, they arrive at the campsite on the mountain. They find and clean up a lot of trash. And of course, you know what happens at the end, which also ties in with the solution. So the solution is how our problem is solved. So go back to the problem, but the solution is also, or the problem is solved at the end of the story. So those two will kind of go together. Okay. Number 4, Scott is a leader. How do Scott's words and actions show that he is a leader? I wrote that I can tell that Scott is the leader of the cleanup crew. He tells everyone what their job is and makes sure that everyone has the right equipment before they start climbing. And of course, that sounds like something that a leader would say and do. They would make sure that everybody has what they need and remind everybody of what their job is. So a leader is somebody that would be over everyone else and making sure that the job gets done. Okay. And then here you will write a brief summary of your reading for the day. And that's it, boys and girls. I will see you shortly for your May 1st last assignment for May 1st.